Good evening, everyone. New time slot, but same awesome duo. Welcome to the Bluemour Mill, where we will be covering 3 rumours that are doing the rounds of the murky internet forums from home and abroad. As usual, my host for this one, my main man, and my favourite guy with a J in his name. Joey, how are you doing, mate?
Thank you, mate. Yes, no, doing well. Hope you're well too, mate. Looking forward to this one.
I can't complain. I can't complain. We've got a real action-packed show to go through. Obviously, we've got some thank yous to go through. Firstly, big shout out to my main man, Steve Reed, big Coventry fan. And as promised, next time you saw me, I'd wear your home shirt with pride. And also a huge shout out to all your members that are running at the bottom of the screen. Without your continued financial support, your love, your wonderful messages, these kind of things wouldn't happen and the magic wouldn't continue. And not just the paying members, all you joining us, thank you from the bottom of both mine and Joey's heart. You make this community a wonderful place to produce content. Well, that's the intro. God, it's so tough to do that. I don't know how Terry does that every week.
I'm glad I don't have to do it, mate. There's no chance.
It was good.
We are very thankful of all our members. Absolutely.
But as always, we have got an action-packed show. And the first rumour we're covering, this one comes from a West Coast forum, and it's doing the rounds in the West Coast Facebook groups. And we're calling it New Rodeo for the Cowboy. And this rumour is as follows. The Bluemour Mill tells us that West Coast wants Sam Petrevski-Seton and are willing to potentially offer us a pick and one of their smalls as collateral. I am hearing Cameron is keen to unite with Eddie Betts. Now, this is a fresh rumour, and it's doing the rounds in quite heavily, actually, in West Coast. We know that he's called the Halls Creek Cowboy, and we know he's a West Coast boy. What are your initial thoughts on this one? And you guys at home, you tell us what you think of this one at face value.
Yeah, look, it's a tough one. You know of all people how big I am on Jared Cameron for me, but boy, do I love SPS. So I'll tell you what, it would be one that would break my heart because I know how good Petrevski-Seton would be in a team that used him properly. But Jared Cameron would be a great prospect. If a pick were to come back as well, it'd be a good deal based on SPS's position as a defender. So if I talk about SPS as a defender, I'd do this deal in a heartbeat if we had a second rounder coming back, which I don't think is out of the question considering Cameron hasn't really had too much game time this season. But if you talk about SPS as that mid-forward connection that we all know he can play, where he's definitely most utilised or best utilised, it's a tough one. You don't know if Cameron is going to be that small forward that everyone thinks he could be. You don't know if he's going to be like Charlie, for instance. If he wants to come to us, great. Like that, so many players are saying, you've got Saad and Williams that have already nominated us. Another one would be fantastic in a position that we need. But I just feel like SPS has so much class. Like it's one that just tears me apart, this one. Like I said, if it was a second rounder coming back, it'd be hard to say no with Cameron. But you just hate to see someone like Petrevski-Seton go to like a West Coast. I use the example of Hawthorn all the time, how they pick up these players that have been played out of position or have fallen out of favour at other clubs, and they just turn them into absolute weapons. And considering Samo's skill set with West Coast, he fits perfectly on the outside, running forward, not off the half-back flank where he was not drafted to be. And it would break my heart to see him just tear it apart at West Coast because I know that he can do it for us in the attacking half of the ground. It'd kill me. But at the same time, like I said, it seems like decent value if a second rounder were to come back with Charlie. See, I'm already jumping ahead. I'm already thinking he's Charlie Cameron with Jared Cameron. But yeah, we don't know. We don't know at this stage. What about yourself, Pom?
For me, I'm a big fan of SPS, and I think when he plays in the midfield, for me, We look at the Doggies game last year. For me, I think he's an absolute, potentially a superstar. Someone just said in the comments, he strikes me as the Mark Murphy replacement, SPS, and I see that in him. He's a classy user. He looks to take the game on. I remember 2017, there was a lot of talk that he was overcoached, and there was a big rumour coming around that Bolton critiqued him for taking the game on too much and turning it over. And after that rumour started, we saw this more insular SPS, a guy that looked reluctant to take that kick on, seemed to hold the ball too much. And I've noticed that down the back. He holds the ball for me way too long. And when he's at his best, he's just give and go. He's kind of like, I was expecting Chris Yarron down the back when he went down there, you know, license to roam, take the game on. And for me, if he's not getting meters gained, there is no point he's down the back at all. And I think with Saad coming in, that's a clear indication for me that Teague feels the same. We need someone that gets the ball and takes it off. So for me, I always look at players, probably, we know I get told off by the Carlton fans. I'm not very emotional with the players. I don't come attached to them. For me, they're tools to do a job. So for me, the way I look at it is I want SPS, and I love him. He's one of my favourites. I want him to be playing week in, week out. It makes sense to me going back to West Coast. He's classy. He's a West Coast boy. But the problem is West Coast, they'd turn him into a superstar. Guaranteed. West Coast, he's got some of the best mentors in the midfield there. He's got Gaff. He's got Shuey. He's got Tim Kelly. He's going to learn a plethora in probably one training session than he has done at the 3-4 years at Carlton. Money-wise, it's a great deal. Jared Cameron's got a high ceiling. Eddie Betts there. Do you know what I mean? Eddie Betts to mentor him and give him the refinity of his already raw talent. And also, if you're getting a second rounder back, which is what that trade suggested, it's very good value. Do you know what I mean? You're getting a need at small forward for a guy that's probably now behind Williams, Sam Walsh, probably Mark Murphy and Ed Kerner. So for me, it probably makes sense if that was the deal. It's fair. Would I want to do it, though? As a Carlton fan, I don't want to do it, but exactly as Helene has just said here, it makes sense. It makes sense for all parties involved. SPS gets a system that will probably use him as a midfield. Like you said, they've got a habit of converting it. It makes sense to West Coast because they've got Zach Langdon coming in. Zach Langdon's nominated them yesterday. Another small forward to an already massive depth for small forwards. They're going to want to lose one. You'd say it'd be Cameron now that Petrevski signed last week for 3 years. So for me, you'd say Cameron's that one that's probably disposable. Not fan of it, but I can see the merit.
On that point there, that last point around the fact that Cameron's probably going to be pushed out anyway. So why do we have to give up SPS? Unless he really wants to go home, which by all reports doesn't seem the case. Maybe we can jag Cameron without having to have SPS in a deal. You know, does a third round to get it done. He hasn't been in the side. He's largely unproven. He last year in his first year, he broke onto the scene, had a couple of games where he kicked bags of goals of 3, 4. But I think a third rounder gets it done just straight up, which is pick 47 for us, and if not even less, to be honest. So does SPS need to be involved? No, not for me. If Cameron sees that he's got no place in the side, especially with potentially Willie Rioli, another one coming back in Pom. Where does he fit in that forward line? He probably doesn't. And if it's game time that he wants, we can give him that in spades. There's a comment here from Dane Rawlings, which I've just.
Oh, my main man, D. My main man.
Basically, he was saying that Cameron's an absolute. Oh, I wish I could find this. Where's it gone? There it is. Jazz Cameron is a beauty, lightning quick, knows where to go for a sausage in spades. Question would be Williams, Saad, Newman in 2021. Where to for SPS? Love the kid, but he'll need to recreate himself. For me, those 3 players that you've listed there, Dane, they don't play in the position that SPS should be playing in. None of them are that high half forward midfield connector, which is where he needs to be. It's where he was drafted to be. You said, Pom, he doesn't have the pace to break lines like Chris Yarron. He never did at under 18 level. He was just silky. He was smooth through traffic, which you've seen at times off the half back line this year. But if he were to do that in traffic higher up the ground with the ball use that he's got, I've said it time and again, it's what we missed so much this year. And SPS for us can play that role next year alongside Jack Martin on that high half-forward flank. So I don't think he needs to be involved in the deal. I think if Cameron wants to leave, we've got enough in terms of picks to be able to get it done without having to involve Petrevski-Seton. If we would be able to keep both on the list, just adds to our depth, and it'd be phenomenal. I've been batting for Jared Cameron since I met you, Pom, about 4 months ago, and even before then. So fingers
I did
crossed.
have to check this rumor to see if you had a burner account in West Coast.
Not me, mate. Not me. I wouldn't include SPS in a deal. I can promise you that.
Well, I mean, for me, I'm with you. I'm with you on this. For me, I think SPS, for me, I see him as an inside midfielder. I always have. I think, for me, he's that. You've got Cripper's grunt, but Cripper doesn't have class. He doesn't have the ability to dance his way out of traffic. He smashes his way out of traffic. Where SPS has that ability to dance. We saw it against the Doggies. Him and Cripper conspired to put on a beautiful performance. Crip's muscle was complemented with SPS's just wonderful ability to play ballet in a game of football while chaos reigned around him. He just took the game on. So for me, I always thought that was his breakout game. And I always thought, Jesus, if you're watching this as a coach, you're like Cripper and SPS as a combo, forget about it. And it just never seemed to happen. So for me, I'm with you. I saw this rumor. I did think that's quite overs. I'd expect 2 players minimum for SPS. I would expect a player, maybe like a Duggan or someone like that who can play a utility role, who may be also on the outer there with what they might bring in and looking to get some salary cap. So for me, I think if we want Cameron, we've got enough trade credit there to go in hard for him. Let us know in the comments what you guys think. What star rating would you give this out of 5? So 5 means it's going to happen. 1 means it's not going to happen. And while we do that, we'll have a look. Tom Wilson here. He says Cameron for 43 would be perfect. Untried at this stage. Depends how much West Coast rate him. Bet's training his second Cameron prodigy. And I think that's spot on. He did it with his brother. Now he's going to do it with the baby one. And to me, I think there's a lot of similarities between Jared and Charlie in their rawness. You see they've got it. They just need to bring it week in, week out. What do you think to this one, Joe?
Yeah, look, that's a spot-on comment, by the way. For me, if I'm looking at this trade as we've got it, so with SPS involved, I'd say 1. If you look at just Jared Cameron in isolation, I think we've got a genuine chance if he sort of looks around and goes, I don't have a spot in this side. And I think that could be a 3.5 star potential for him to come across. I wouldn't want to see SPS involved. I don't think he needs to be involved. Like a lot of people are saying, they'd be gutted if we traded him. He's got so much to offer us still. And Cameron on his own would be worth a 3rd rounder on its own. So I don't see the need for it. Yourself, Pom?
Well, I mean, for me, I would say, because the lowest rating is 1, and I'm a man who sticks to the rules. Poms love rules. So I can't give it a 0, but I'll give it a 1. For me, I personally think Teague rates SPS. I really do. And I think he sees the future. I've always seen SPS off the halfback, for me, as kind of his way of getting him into the game. And we saw towards the end of last year, SPS did start to get into the game. He started to be given that midfield time that he craved. So for me, I can see it. For me, I can see he will get there. He will.
Just before we move on to the next one, that's a really good point around bringing him in through the middle later in the year. But the other thing is, Samo got hammered throughout the season for his performances, like from all angles. There were some games where he was non-existent. He had 5 touches against the Giants, like just almost it was the Giants. Maybe it was the week prior. I can't remember. He bounced back the week prior, but he had 5 touches in a game, was non-existent, did absolutely nothing for us. I think Cam Paulson might have done more in that game than what he did, which says a lot. But Teague had the confidence to back him week in, week out. He missed 1 game. He played 16 out of 17 games. He backed him week in, week out, and backed him on that halfback flank. Now, you got Adam Saad coming in next year. Samo doesn't need to play there now. We've got cover back there. Marchbank will be coming back. Newman will be coming back. For me, there's not a spot on the halfback line for Samo. Samo pushes up through the middle of the ground next year if he stays on our list, and he'll play each week further up the ground, and we'll see how much he can actually give us.
I agree with you. And we've got here, I'll read Wildy's out. That's actually a good one. If we were to get West Coast first plus Cameron do the deal, trade 2 future firsts for Oliver. I can see the merit. I could see the merit. I think Wowdy's spot on there. I think if we were going to do it, it would be because there'd be a plan for the pick. And if you look at West Coast picks, they went absolute batshit crazy, pardon my French, for Tim Kelly. So for me, I think it would be for an on-trade of that future. The general consensus is don't do it. By my calculations, a quick POM maths would be 1.2 is the likelihood of that. And a few people have done zeros. We're not allowed to do zeros, remember? 1 to 5 was the thing, but I'll let it slide. Well, we'll move on to the next one. And the next one we're dubbing Blues Have an Itch for Titch. A lot of work goes into these titles, just so you know. But
he's on fire.
I'll spend a couple of cups of tea coming up with this. So this one actually comes from Hawthorn Football Club itself. I have been invited into one of the biggest trade rumours because my mate admins it, and he's lied and said I'm a Hawthorn fan. So it's been good to see this one. Sources close to me say Tom Mitchell is gettable. Hort's looking to back in O'Meara, Warple, Cousins and Day. Has an affinity with Carlton, and he is the big fish that Carlton are linked with.
Yeah.
Now, if you went out to, like Build-A-Bear, and it was called Build a Pom a Footballer, and you built me a footballer, you would build Tom Mitchell, because I love Tom Mitchell. Like, I would probably change my name by deed poll to Tom Mitchell. So before I get excited, you guys in the audience and girls, you tell me what you think about this. And Mr. Joe, over to you.
It's one you have been, I think, overly excited would be an understatement, Pom, around this rumor for you. You've been hammering it all week into me. Look, it feels like a genuine rumor from where it's come from. If that is the case, if it's on the table, he's a Brownlow medalist. We know what he can do. He just racks it up. So we've spoken about Hunter and Oliver in past shows. Mitchell racks them up with the best of them. Like, if you want an accumulator, this is your guy. I think there's a couple of people in here that have said he's injury prone, and yeah, look, he broke his leg. He had a few injuries at Sydney, but we've got Andrew Russell. He's generally done a pretty good job with our list, other than the really serious injuries, obviously, to Marchbank with his neck and Charlie with that knee. But like, when you got ahead of high performance, it's come from Hawthorn. He's probably worked with him briefly as well. Why would you not bring in Tom Mitchell if he's on the table? I know that Gary and Tim in the mornings on SEN, they keep alluding to this big fish that they refuse to name, that the Blues are linked to. If Tom Mitchell is genuinely that big fish, and there is just a sniff of a chance, whether it happens or not, the fact that these rumors are coming up and that the club is potentially looking at these players and aggressively by tabling offers, like for Oliver with those 2 firsts that we've spoken about, it just shows where our club's going. Like, I'm going to keep the lid on it, but it's a far cry from where we were. It is streaks ahead from where we were 24 months ago, 18 months ago. So, I mean, this is just exciting in itself to talk about it. But for me, you do the deal in a heartbeat. I would assume 2 firsts. He's 27. Potentially 28 by round 1. So he's sort of peaking as a midfielder. He did miss that year too. So, that conditioning from this season should carry into next season, as long as he gets in a really full preseason into his body. But him alongside Cripps would be phenomenal to watch. They'd be the best 2 midfielders in the comp, side by side. And it'd be a thrill to watch that every week. Pom, try and keep a lid on it, mate. Try and keep your pants on. But
because looking at the comments, like, we've got Shea Blues here saying check out his kicking efficiency, and he also said that he's a butcher. Well, if we go on to the Clayton Oliver post, I put a nice little personal stat on how good the inside midfielders are. It's very important when we look at inside midfielders. Now, this guy, looking at it, plays 89.2% of time in the guts. That is one of the highest of all available midfielders recorded, and that's over the last 5 years. He actually has the high in kicking efficiency of them all, bar Jack McRae, who only spends 51.2% in the guts. So remember, these players by Champ Starter get ripped off. Patrick Cripps, Clayton Oliver, they get ripped off because they are compared with outside midfielders. And if you've ever played football or any form of football, even soccer, you play on the wing, you are out of trouble. It's very easy to hit a target. You play CDM in soccer or you play on the ball, very hard to hit a target when you've got 8 blokes trying to knock your head off. So this guy is elite with the ball in his hand. This guy is elite with the ball in his hands. This guy is brilliant. And you look at it this year, one of 2 inside midfielders to have an elite disposable efficiency. This year has actually been harder to be efficient in shortened quarters. We have found more stoppages and more intensity. So it is very hard. I love this guy because I think you look at our midfield, we've got Patrick Cripps, absolute ox of a player, absolute beast of a player. You look at Sam Walsh, for me, a lot of talk of Sam Walsh going back on the ball. I totally disagree with that idea. I think Sam Walsh has found his best position. As that outside runner, the ability to destroy teams on the outside. He has, for me, I see him as the Kelly of this team, GWS Kelly. He can float everywhere. He's proven he can kick goals. For me, phenomenal. And for me, Tom Mitchell, what he does, and whether that's Clayton Oliver or Tom Mitchell, he gives Cripps that help, and we don't handball enough in the centre. You look at all the good teams, they have a handball. We have a huge turnover rate from centre clearance to turnover, and that is because we don't handball it. You watch what Tom Mitchell does, he gives it to a smarter player, a smarter loser. So for me, I think whether that's Cripps, whether that's Clayton Oliver, whether that's Tom Mitchell, I don't care. But I'm a big fan of Tom Mitchell, big fan. And I think anyone who's saying he's not a great player, it's a little bit harsh, man. They don't hand out Brownlows. They don't hand out... Players don't vote you top 5 MVP. Do you know what I mean? If you're not good. And for me, the rumour comes from, I was actually asking a few Mitchell Hawthorn fans. So the rumour comes out, and I didn't realise this. Round 12, Alistair Clarkson said his midfield was country grade. And he singled out Tom Mitchell. So that evidently has escalated, that when Clarkson singles out a player, usually it means he's surplus. And if you actually look at the research, Warple and O'Meara have actually suffered from having Tom Mitchell there. Their numbers were superior. So for me, I can see the merit. I always look at these trade rumours. Why would your team trade it? So they would probably get a first and a second. There is heavy rumours for me as well from the Hawthorn pages. They're into Dow and they're into Stocker from the Bolton connection. So that would say to me they're looking to cash in on a player. And Tom Mitchell would probably be the only position Hawthorn have. I see Fallen Sports on here. He's a huge Hawthorn fan. He might be able to say, but I would say their midfield is probably the most depth for me. Their most depth. They've got talent coming out of their eyeballs. Finn McGuinness, Will Day, James Cousins. They've got a lot of players. So for me, I think that would be the area. And it is the glue, I think. I think what Tom Mitchell doesn't get enough credit for, he's the glue that holds a midfield together. And we've got talent around him. Cripper's brilliant. Walsh is good. So for me, he is definitely someone that I would look at. And I don't think he'll be as much as Oliver. I would say his price would be half what Oliver is.
You're probably right. You're probably right. And it would be because of his age. I know I said 2 first rounders before. What I meant by that is that just absolutely gets the deal done if you want it done. I think his value is a first and a second, or a first and Dow, or Dow and a second and a future second. You know, it's a mixture of that. So, yeah, look, I think you're spot on. What we don't have in our midfield, and it's Walsh is an accumulator. He's been an accumulator since he was in under 18s. He knows how to find the football. He averaged the most historically in under 18s than any other player to date. It was like 29.6 disposals or whatever it was. Look, what we don't have is a Tom Mitchell. He gets in and under. He gets the ball. He handballs it out the back to someone that can use it better, which is what you said before. For me, sorry, I just got a couple of messages coming through from some mates around this as well. They're firing up, Pom. They are firing up. Look, it's he's the player that we don't have at the moment. He's the Cripps. Cripps has played that role in the past. He played that when he was a lot younger on our list when he was 19, 20. He used to get in and get the ball, and you'd see a quick handball out the back over his shoulder, and it would land in a player's lap. Tom Mitchell grabs the ball, turns around, finds a player, gets the ball back if that player's got nothing, and finds another player to get rid of it. And the ball use out of that handball receive from that player, because they're in so much space, because Mitchell just attracts every player in that stoppage to him. The time and space that those players have out of that stoppage by receiving that handball from Mitchell is something we don't have at the moment. Cripps just gets tagged in and under. He gets hit. He gets pummeled. He doesn't have breakaway speed to get away from a stoppage. We don't see it enough. He doesn't have the ability to do it. Mitchell will give you that. He'll win the ball. He'll get out of the stoppage. He'll get the ball back. He'll give another one out, and then it'll be a very, very good kick forward most of the time from the Hawthorn player. So if you haven't looked at it closely enough when Tom Mitchell plays, go look at Hawthorn's stoppage work over the years with him there. The one thing you did say, Pom, was your Hawthorn mates were saying, or not your Hawthorn mates, but it was said by Clarkson that Mitchell, took the attention away from guys like O'Meara and Warple and Cousins and whatnot, whose numbers were better last season. The question would be begged, though, why would we bring him into our midfield group if that's the case? Could he potentially detract from our midfielders like Walsh, like Setterfield, like even Kennedy, that have shown in patches how much they're improving? Would it just be a detriment to our midfield to have an accumulator like that there, besides Curnow and Cripps, who already can get their hands on the football? Would it be to the same effect as what we're seeing at Hawthorn? Because for me, I think it would be slightly different because we just don't have that sort of player.
For me, when you look at where Tom Mitchell plays, you look at Warple, very similar players. Warple's junior career, very similar. He was an accumulator, an in and under player. For me, Warple is a type of player that needs to be the main event. Needs to have that responsibility. O'Meara, I don't think O'Meara for me affects Tom Mitchell's role. O'Meara's that muscle, that guy that gives him that extra 5 seconds to touch the ball. And for me, the reason I think Hawthorn would sell them would be that reason alone, that they back Alistair Clarkson. When he backs youth, he backs youth. And for me, I think it would make sense. It would be a very Clarkson thing to do for me. Very Clarkson thing to do. Fallen Sports was kind enough to kind of answer this question. He's a good friend of the channel, very, very respectful Hawthorn fan. So that's why I wanted to be respectful of this, because this is their Patrick Cripps. He says our midfield has the most depth. McGuinness, Cousins, Day, Warple, O'Meara, heaps, I reckon. He thinks Mitchell will stay. It's a 2 for mine, though, in first rounders. It's a slight chance, but I very much doubt it happening. But like he said, they have a plethora of midfielders. So for me, it would be that. I mean, you look at last year, people are saying his last year was pants. Like, I don't get where you get these numbers from. He ranks in midfield stats for the 12 that Champs dare to keep. 9 of them are elite. 3 of them are number 1. Like, if that's a bad season and he's fallen off the cart because he's got a bad leg and a shoulder, Jesus, he's better than anyone we've got who does that job. Like, at the moment, Matt Murphy does that job last season.
Absolutely. In that role. For sure. I think a lot of the talk initially, Pom, came from there was a Buckley interview in Mitchell's Brownlow year where he had 2 disposal games against the Pies, but the Pies won those games. And Buckley basically said we didn't tag him because he doesn't have impact. And from that point, I think people have been quite critical of Mitchell, and they've jumped on that bandwagon to go, he doesn't gain meters. He's just a handballer. He's an accumulator. What does he do? Like I said, watch what he does in close. His ability to get the ball and give it to a better player is what we're missing. It's what we've spoken about with Hunter being able to play that role. It's what we've spoken about potentially Oliver being able to play that role. Get those handballs out. Mitchell's that player. The other thing is, if you have a look later in the season, just before we get to the comments and before we get to the ratings on this, late in the season, I watched the Hawks a little bit and watched Mitchell's role. I wouldn't be surprised if he has fallen out of favour a little bit with Clarkson, or if Clarkson has given him a little bit of a whipping, because he didn't play that role late in the season. He actually played like half forward and half back. He played in these little pockets just off half back and in these little pockets on half forward, where he wasn't racking up those 30 disposal games or 35 disposal games, 25 disposal games. He was getting like 15, 20 touches, playing in no man's land. So from that perspective, it wouldn't surprise me if he, not if he's fallen out of favour, but if the Hawks have an affinity right now to go, let's get value for him because we don't actually need him. We back our midfield and let's try and get a Dow or an O'Brien or a Stocker in the mix and see what we can do with this sort of player. It wouldn't surprise me. So this is why, although it's a rumour that's not spoken about as much as Clayton Oliver, for instance, in recent times, if it were to be true, it wouldn't come as a shock to me. It just wouldn't come as a shock to me. So let's look at some of the comments, guys. I saw one around an injury to Mitchell at the moment, which we did forget to mention. He does have a shoulder injury. He's gone in for surgery and will miss a little bit of the preseason. Will it affect his trade value? Probably not. Russell's worked with him before. I'm sure Russell would understand what niggling injuries Mitchell's carrying. I think we do our due diligence as well. I don't think we'd take on a player like this if his body was cooked. You've got to remember, clubs do medicals. They don't just jump on players without doing their due diligence, looking at their papers, looking at their medicals. So for me, it gets done if he's healthy. Number one, we're not at a point in our rebuild or with our list where we can take on a completely injury prone player. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, guys. If it were to get done. What else have we got, Pom?
Let's have a look. We've got, I like this one here from Brendan, because Brandon Pratchett always comments, always usually intelligent, which I like. It's we need Clayton Oliver more than Tom Mitchell. Oliver is younger, decent shout, but would prefer Oliver for sure. Even though, as Peter Vella commented, we should call him Pom Mitchell. That was very clever. Absolutely. Got a chuckle from me. I don't often get thrown. I personally think Clayton Oliver for me. If I had to choose, I'd probably go Clayton Oliver, purely because of his body of work and his age. And we've got throw in your star ratings while me and Joe deliberate, 1 being not happening, 5 being happening. In my heart, this is a 5. Logically, I think it's a 3. I think it's a 3, and I will tell you why. I think a lot of smoke, a lot means there's fire. And the media keep dropping this name hasn't been mentioned. Gary Lyon the other day said the same thing. It hasn't been mentioned in the press, but there is $1 million player being linked, and he sold it. Now, to me, Oliver has been linked in the press prior. This one hasn't. So I think if we look at that outside of the square, chance 3 out of 5 for me. 3 out of 5. Joe, where are you?
That's fair for me, mate. Unfortunately, we're going to differ massively here. It's a 1.5 for me at the moment, Pom. I haven't seen enough yet. Look, if he does turn out to be the big fish, I think we've got enough in terms of picks and salary and whatnot to get it done. But right now, 1.5 at best for me. We'll see. Yeah. We'll see. No, I can't budge on that, mate. I can't. It's at the moment. I know you're in love with the bloke. You'd call your next kid Tom Mitchell as a first name.
I've already got the paperwork to turn my oldest David into Tom, so don't worry about it. Let's go through it. Terry, obviously dogging the boys as usual, 2 out of 5. Paul Harvey, 2.5. Shea Bruce, spot on. Old Barry Mitchell used to play for the Blues. I do believe when he selected them because it was sold on the back. They were closest to the flag. So can't blame him for that. We were a basket case in 2017. So Nathan Porter, I love you, mate. 5 out of 5. Love it. My new favourite. Musaka 0.01. Shea Blue 0. So looking at this, I probably shouldn't get excited because the jury has spoken. I'm a man of jury. The esteemed Blue Abroad jury say, not going to happen, Dan. So we move on. It's sad. And the final one, and I am super proud of this title, Super proud of this title.
Very good.
Heads for your heads. Oh, that's good. And this rumor comes from just about everywhere. And let's read it out. I am hearing Dodoro has asked for pick 7 and one of Charlie Curnow, Harry Mackay, and Sam Walsh. Sam Walsh. Now, for me, I know a lot of Essendon fans because, you know, I hang around some dark, dingy places. And one thing that Essendon fans say to me is, oh, I hate it when you go on about drug culture and stuff. But I actually think that Essendon are not guilty of taking performance-enhancing drugs. But they're definitely guilty in the locker room, in the boardroom of taking drugs. Because I can't believe this is true. They need drug testing again. Gillian, I know you watch this show. Mate, test them because something's going on. Tell me, everyone in the audience as well, just tell me the thoughts on this one because I had to have 25 cups of tea just to calm down.
Yeah, I remember when it came out, we had a conversation and you were absolutely raring at the gate on this one, Pom. We've had a couple of comments come through around it being pick 7 and DeConning, which is true, which is what was actually reported. But there was a rumor that went around that he asked for a first rounder and one of Sam Walsh, Charlie, and Harry to begin at the very start before going to just one of, we'll just take one of Walsh, Charlie, or Harry for Saad. That seems fair. Before he went on to the DeConning and pick 7. Now, for me, I've spoken to Essendon supporters this week. I've got a lot of them, a lot of mates. One of them I work with. He's of the opinion that Dodoro is an idiot. So he's of the opinion that he thinks Dodoro is going to absolutely tear apart their rebuild. What he's doing at the moment is tearing apart the club, not allowing a player to get to a club that he's nominated and out of contract for at a decent value, at what he should be fair and reasonably valued at, and starting it at a ridiculous what is called a walk-away opening offer. If I'm Nick Austin and that comes across my desk, I say to Dodoro, well, how about you give us Saad and Merritt just for pick 7 and you leave it there. And you let Dodoro come back to when he actually wants to come to the table with something reasonable, because it's just not reasonable. Any of those players mentioned, any of those packages mentioned is not reasonable. It made me angry that we're actually at this stage. If he walks to the preseason draft, Essendon would be stupid to take him because he has already said that he's going to reject an offer if he doesn't get to the Blues. It would be silly. So Dodoro's got no leverage to come out and do these things. If Saad had 2-3 years left on his contract and we're chasing him hard and we've offered him $900K to get him out of there because it's a player that we need, yeah, okay. You know what? Start off with Walsh. Start off with Charlie. Fine. That, you know what? You've probably got a right to start there. He's out of contract, mate. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? The culture at your club is already going down the toilet from what we can see. There are players asking. Devon Smith's another one that's just said he wants to leave, potentially looking at other offers. Like, what are you doing, Dodoro? Get in picks, get in value, get it done. You're not in a position to haggle like you were with Shield. You're not in a position to haggle like last year with Danaher, which evidently lost out on pick 5 and pick 9 for, and you're going to get an end of first round compensation for now. Don't be an idiot. Don't be an idiot. This isn't the time for haggling. You don't have leverage. It infuriated me when this came out. I've got other Essendon mates that back him, that back the strategy he's going with. I don't get it myself. I don't get it. So anyway, that's my rant. It was good to get that off my chest because that's been sitting on my chest all week. It's just an idiot. I think if Saad walks, Dodoro gets his just desserts from this because he's turning it into something that it just shouldn't be.
Well, I mean, we all know my thoughts of it. I covered it on the Pom in Oz channel, my own channel, saying that basically he's got no value. And regardless of if you think he'll end up to Carlton on PSD, that's irregardless. The facts are they're going to lose him for free at the end of this trade period if they can't negotiate a trade. So as far as Essendon are considered, it doesn't really matter who takes him. They're going to get nothing for him unless a trade is done. So for me, it was the most stupidest thing I've heard this week. And I was walking the dog at the start of this week, and my youngest son asked me, wouldn't it be great if we could inject a dog So the dog's poo tasted like chocolate, so it would eat it. We didn't have to pick it up. And up until this trade, that was actually the stupidest thing I've heard. I'm actually thinking of getting my youngest son a ticket to Mensa because he might be a genius.
Not bad. That's
honestly, I don't. You know, I'm a pom. I love banter. It's all good fun, but that was fucking ridiculous. Excuse my French. That was one of the stupidest things I've ever seen in my life. Do you know what I mean? Absolutely in my life. And it was only second only before I read your comments on this. Second only to Tim Watson, who said, if you're willing to pay someone over 650k, you should be willing to give 700k. You should be able to get willing to give pick 7, which again is another thing that I don't understand. Because are you telling me, now this might be an Australian cultural thing, but to me, if you're selling something, I'm trying to rip you off. I'm trying to rip you off and get a better deal for me. So if you're selling a house for 700k, you're going bankrupt and you offer it on the market for 500k and it's valued at 800k, would you offer 800k, 300k above what's asking just because you're a good get? These guys are our rivals. I want us to offer pick 60 and then run off and laugh. Do you know what I mean? And then do what Manchester City did when they signed Tevez and put welcome to Carlton with Adam Saad outside of their shitty little... It's madness. Honestly, if you validate this, and I know I've got a lot of Essendon mates, if you validate that trade, you're a fucking idiot. An absolute idiot. And if I see Adrian Dodoro in the street, I'm slapping the twat. 7 times. 7 times I'm slapping him. Idiot. Let's have a look at some of your comments. That's being seen here. He's a goose. Adonis Destonis. I think I've done all right there. He's a goose. I wouldn't even give him pick 7. I'd let Saad walk to Carlton through the draft. Spot on. Intelligence is restored. I'm happy. Josh Klebs, great friend of the channel. Big fan of Josh. He keeps me going throughout the day with chats. Walking through 90% chance of him coming to us. Spot on. Felix 39, need a key forward. Mackay not elite yet. And Charlie has lost a bit of momentum, although he's injured. Okay. Brendan Pratchett, I think it's pretty clear that they would go after all these players. Dodoro is the type of list manager to do this. And honestly, the only one to do this, it's a no-brainer that Dodoro will go through for these guys. Dodoro just wants the best possible. I agree with you, but to me... And I think it was Jeffrey O'Day who said this. I saw this comment on a post about this, and it was spot on intelligent. And I love the comment. He said, if you start off negotiations in bad faith, you're not going to get anywhere. And we know last year he was proud when he said he'd gone to Sydney and said, I want your first round pick, Heaney and Callum Mills. You're never going to negotiate because you've just taken the piss. To me, if I'm Nick Austin, I'm saying, Adrian, 27 here and now. If not, I'll see you in PSD. And the longer this goes on, the value goes down because if this is an hour to go before the trade window, he's going to have to accept whatever offer comes in or gets nada. So for me, I don't think Adam Saad pick 7. I don't think Adam Saad's pick 7 if he was 3-year contracted either. I don't. So
look, you could potentially end there if he's got a 3-year deal that's tying him up and you really want him. Of course, you're going to pay that if that's a player that you absolutely want and you need to pay that to get him out. It's like what Sydney did with Papley, right? Same thing. But you have to be respectful in negotiation from the get-go. Dodoro's never been that. He's always been. If this is the extreme end of the opening, he's way over here. Starts way over there to try and get back to here. What's the point, mate? You've got no leverage. What are you doing? What are you? It baffles me every time I think about the fact that has actually been tabled to us for Adam Saad, a player that said he wants to come to us and he's trying to sell Saad for a Mackay, a Curnow, a Walsh, or a De Koning with pick 7. Baffles me that anyone even has the balls to come to the table with something like that. It downright almost pisses me off. I think we need to move on, Pom.
I do. Tell you what, everyone, give me a star rating and then throw your questions at us on trade. We'll answer a few and have a bit of a discussion. Give me a star rating that you think we will offer. Whatever that was, 7 and one of our best things. I'm breaking the rules. Screw it. I'm the host. I'm giving it -10. And if it happens, I will run naked through Essendon's training camp and rugby tackle Zach Merritt. Like, honestly, absolute madness.
No one wants to see me and you doing that palm through the hanger, I can promise you. But yeah, I'm not even going to give it a rating. I'm not even, the fact that we've given it 5 minutes of our time is enough. Like, I'm not even giving that a rating. That's
I just wanted to lay into Adrian Dodoro. I mean, I don't trust anyone with the same sound in their surname. It's almost like he was named after a stutter. Like, what is going on there? Clown. Adrian, if you're watching this, sort your life out. You're a mug. Right. So let's have a look at some questions. Everyone has pretty much unanimously given it an average of you've got more chance of me getting a haircut next week than you have of that going through. So throw some questions in. Tom P, can we get a GoFundMe for Pom's nude run? You might not need a GoFundMe. Probably you just need 6 beers because I haven't drank in 3 months. So play your cards right. Secret player. This is a good question. I like this one. Should Carlton go for a big, tall forward? I say this, will Curnow and Mackay be enough for finals? Now, what are your thoughts on this one? What are you like? Do you firstly, and audience as well, do you back Charlie Curnow to stay fit all year? And B, do you think all three can work together? McGovern, Mackay, and obviously Curnow. We haven't seen all three of them play together extensively.
Not very often. And I think they have at times, and when they have, it's worked. Like, it's really worked. Go look at I think the Sydney game early last year in like round 2 or round 3. All 3 of them played together, and we lost the game. But the way that they clicked, especially just throughout the day, I think Charlie played that day. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Ed was up forward that day. I'm getting my Curnows mixed up. I think Ed was forward that day, kick 4. There was another game where they clicked really, really early on in the game. And they look great together. For me, Charlie's the big question. I've got one of my cousins, Corey. He's done the same injury that Charlie's done. And while Corey isn't an elite athlete by any standard, and obviously he doesn't have the same elite sports scientists around him to get his knee right. It's a hell of an injury. Like, still struggling every now and then. Locks up on him. So it's not an injury that's just happened out of the blue for Charlie either. It's a niggling injury that's been with him in that knee that just exacerbated, obviously later on in his career last year. So that's the biggest question for me, is whether or not Charlie can get back to it, whether or not Charlie has the same athleticism that he showed us before the injury, especially in that Bulldogs game, which was phenomenal. He's obviously his best game to date. But if he can get back to that, why do you need another key tool? Why? Like, I think to that question, I think we need to give it a year. I think we need to hold on to Mackay, McGovern, and Curnow. Maybe McGovern goes if Essendon asks for him in a trade for Saad. If it suits both parties, okay. Like, McGovern hasn't shown what he probably needed to at this point for us. But if Charlie gets back to where he is, that forward line looks absolutely phenomenal with those 3 tools there. It's just so dynamic. So, and you've got Casbolt as well as a backup if one of them goes down, who's shown that he's still got some good footy in him. So I think we can probably hold off another year before we go after another forward. I think we've got plenty.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think Levi Casbolt's re-signed, so he's an able backup. We know TDK can float through there. We know that Pitternet can soul ruck, so if it's needed as well, and we are in an injury crisis, we know TDK's done really well. For me, I actually think what we're going to see as well is Curnow actually play the role that Mitch McGovern does. We see Mitch McGovern float down the wing, take that mark, be that kick out. We know that's what Curnow did all the time. So I cannot wait to be at the G round 1 singing Curnow, running down the wing. And I can't wait to see that, to me. So for me, I don't think we need to get one at the moment. For me, I would say small forwards, and I've seen a few of you comment them. For me, I think a small forward is probably the need at the moment. That's what I'd be going, whether that's a Jack Loney or whatever, I don't know, but I'd like to see that. Good question here. I've just lost it. Here we are from Jude Blundy 24. We love this because it's early. Tips for Richmond versus Carlton, round 1, 2021. Everyone in your comments, put your pre-season round 1 tips now, and we'll see how positive we are the day before round 1. Go.
No, don't make me do this. Do you know how many? I've lost so many slabs to one of my work colleagues over this round 1. Over the years, he's gonna absolutely blast me after this, Pom. So thank you very much, and thank you very much, Jude Blundy 24, for putting me on the spot like this. If we get Williams, so there's a caveat, okay? So I'm not locking this in. I'm just saying if we get Williams, if we get Saad. If Charlie's up and running by round 1, and if we get a third player in this offseason, a Jared Cameron, whoever it may be, whether it's an elite player, an average player, whoever, just to add to our list and add some more value to our list, there's a chance. There's a chance we can finally break the duck against the Tigers in round 1, but. Trust me, you've just cost me another slab there, Pom, for sure. There'll be a slab on this tomorrow after this show, but so we'd have to get those players that we need to be a chance. If we don't, and we are where we were as of round 18, 2020, with the addition of only Zach Williams and a couple of draftees with Brody Kemp coming back and maybe Charlie Curnow, look, it'll be competitive, but I can't say that we'd win. But who knows? You, Pom, you're probably going to say that Charlie, like Zeke said, Charlie 12.
I'll tell you what happened. Saad will absolutely take the piss off halfback. Clayton Oliver will suddenly look like he was born as the twin brother of Patrick Cripps as they smash the Surrey Tigers. Walsh will hit Curnow more times than you've ever seen, and Curnow will kick 10. Carlton will win by 42. Stick that. Bobby Winston, if you're watching this, you're recouping at the moment with your ACL. Enjoy this grand final if you get there, because you're going to be our whipping boys round 1, my friend, for the next 10 years. Absolutely smash them by 42. Lock it in. Lock it in. Throw away the key. No more Tigerland. It's all about the Blues. And everyone seems to agree with me. We've got Helena. She said 25. Like, people are backing it in here, bro. Look, David Buck, 23, Peter V by 15. We're coming. I mean, I love this one by Joshua. 100 Carlton, 26 Richmond. That's what I'm talking about. We're here. We're here, boys. We're here. Come on.
Tight-lipped.
We've got a good one here from Josh Klebs. We haven't heard much from you, Joe. Who do you think the big fish is? Tell you what, we'll set a challenge. Everyone's got to pick a big fish that hasn't been mentioned. Who do you think the left field suggestion is? Joe?
I still think that big fish that they're alluding to, just considering it's Gary Lyon and he's quite tight-lipped on it, I still think they're alluding to Clayton Oliver. Even though it's been sort of mentioned in the media, I still think Gary has been a bit coy on it because he doesn't want to mention one of his boys in a potential trade. For me, that's a lot of people are probably thinking, oh, you should have said Marcus Bontempelli. That would have been great if that was the left. Like, come on. It's not going to be Bont. It's not going to be DeGoey. We know it's not going to be DeGoey. I think, and someone said Bailey Smith here. Like, okay, there was a rumor that came out around some Bulldogs party.
Bailey Smith, talking.
Led by Tom Libber and Lockie Hunter and the like, with, I think Caleb Daniel got thrown off the balcony into a pool dressed as Evil Knievel. Absolutely cracked me up. It's not true. Bailey Smith's going nowhere. Way too valuable at the Dogs. For me, it'll be Oliver. That'll be the left field one. Maybe, actually, this is a good one from Exit. Josh Kelly, potentially.
I reckon we haven't had, because there's 3 things that happen at Carlton every trade period. 1, whoever's out of contract gets linked with us. 2, Will Brodie is linked with us. And 3, Josh Kelly is linked with Carlton. And I haven't seen any Carlton linkage to Josh Kelly yet. So,
You're right.
And it makes me think, is this the year Joshy K comes?
I mean, it'll depend on Cameron's situation, right? Which we have been told today that the Giants are going to know a lot more about within the week. So for me, we know the salary cap issues at the Giants, right? They've got Taranto on big money. They've already got Kelly on big money with a trigger clause in his contract that some have rumored to be up to like 8 years or something, which is ludicrous, absolutely ludicrous. I don't think that's the case. They've got Cameron that's looking to re-sign on big money. They've signed Cogs on big money. They've signed Green on. How many players can these guys have on big money, especially if the salary cap, and I know the salary cap will be relative to wages once it gets cut and once the sizes get cut. I get that. But I think if Jeremy Cameron signs, potentially could be that left field big fish that people are talking about. I can't see Cameron staying, which means that Kelly stays.
Well, I mean, if you actually read last night, AFL were doing some testing on their website, and there is a conspiracy theory going round because evidently a notification. Now, I've seen the screenshot because my mate showed me it on his app. It actually had Cameron to Geelong, and it also had Heath Shaw to Collingwood. And he was saying, because I've had this theory for years, every trade period since I've got here, the big deal always goes through last 10 minutes. Always last 10 minutes. And I was like, there's no way it happens like that. Gillian, he's pocketing a little bit of ad revenue. He pushes it back to the last 5 minutes. And I was like, I wonder if they are done and we're just like mugs talking about it for 2 weeks. So I agree with you. I think Kelly will be a chance should Cameron stay. But I think Cameron's off. Some good ones here. We've got Taranto from Musaka. Zeke Murley, he was talking about Powell Pepper. Powell Pepper's definitely that big body thug that we kind of probably desperately creed. Yaval, he says, bring back Houlihan. Josh Klebs. Bryce Gibbs running down the wing. Come on, Josh. You know me better than that. Harry O'Farrell, Tom Hawkins. You see, I've heard a lot of this as well. I've seen that rumor a few times. I don't know where that rumor comes from, but if Dodoro has his way, we might be looking for a new key forward. This is a great one.
Matt Gandolfo's got one I've just seen here. Matt Rowell, which I saw briefly make the.
God, I love him as well.
Apparently, he was a Carlton supporter before being drafted to the Suns. I'm not sure if that's true.
There's actually pictures of him. Carlton posted a picture of him at the training session.
I tell you what. I'm gonna make a big call here. This is the biggest call I've made, and you wanted me to make a big call for a long time, Pommy.
I'm excited.
If Matt Rowell is the big fish, firstly, he's going to cost us 3 first-round picks. All right, so let's just get that across the table, or 2 first-rounders with an absolute B grader or A grader thrown in. If we were to get Matt Rowell, okay, we, along with Williams, along with Saad, this will be not only our best off-season to date in the history of our club, it will be the best off-season any club has ever had in the history of football. And we will make top 6 or top 4 next year. The kid's a freak. I don't think he's going anywhere. He's already said that, and he seems like a loyal kid. He seems like when he got drafted there, he wanted to make the Suns what we saw in the first 3 or 4 rounds this year, where he was that leader that just came in like he'd already played 200 games for his club, led them to wins. When he went down, the club fell to shit, basically. So I can't see him leaving. But if he is, that would get me beyond excited, Pom. Beyond excited.
Oh, I mean, my son told me I was old the other day because I'm hitting 35 next week. I mean, I wouldn't need a blue pill for the next 20 years if we sign Matt Rowell. I tell you, I've got a thing for gingers at the moment. A thing for gingers, Clayton Oliver, Matty Rowell. Oh, Matty Rowell and Sam Walsh in the midfield for the next decade. I'm insatiable now when we're only linked with Saad and Williams. Imagine that. Imagine that. Oh,
I don't know because it's not going to happen. I don't want to imagine it because it's not going to happen. And luckily, we're at the end of the show because this could have gone way.
Fans, just before we wrap it up, Joey's big call, lock it in, Carlton sign trade window. As always, thank you so much for everyone who's joined. I absolutely appreciate. Me and Joe love doing this. This is the new time slot now, I believe. from when football finishes. We will be on Friday nights, but up until then, it'll be Friday night next week, once a week. If you have got any rumours you see, I've got a few sneaky people. Just DM Blue Abroad or DM me or Joe, and we'll compile them. We'll make sure that no one knows who sent them. But thank you so much, everyone. Big shout out to everyone. Double Shackers, Pom out.
See you guys. Take care.